Hey guys, welcome back to another video. I hope you're doing well. I wanted to talk to you about three important things today. One of them is to do with the military front. The second one is political. And the third one is to do with a poll. I'll start with the first one. Moshe Kaplinsky, who was a previous leader in the Golani Brigade, one of Israel's biggest brigades and the most sophisticated one, he recently made a statement saying that we lost a quarter of Golani. Now, he visited them very recently. He's in constant communication with them, and he gets updates from his colleagues and previous fellows in Golani about what's happening, how many casualties they have, what are the progresses, what are the shortfalls, what do they do, what do they not do. He lately said they lost a quarter of Golani. Now, just to clarify, Golani is made up of 5 battalions. On average, although Israel doesn't publish the exact number of each battalion, but on average, you have about 1,000 in each battalion. But what made his comments very suspicious and people were confused is the fact that he said 82 were killed and we have hundreds injured. Okay, so if we take the average, although it might be much higher, but just for argument's sake, if we take the average battalion size and the fact that Golani consists of 5 battalions, we reach a number of 5,000. A quarter of that battalion is 1,200. So where are you coming with this figure from exactly? If you're talking about 82 only dead, does that mean 1,100 are injured? This doesn't make any sense, because usually with urban warfare battles, it's usually 1 killed per 3 injured, and it doesn't make any sense. So they're clearly hiding the figures again. We've seen last couple of days the Israeli hospitals released astonishing figures about the numbers of the Israeli soldiers who were in the hospitals, although the IDF did not want them to publish those figures. But from time to time, they have slips that might let out further information just to give us an indication about how many people they have lost. So if we want to take his figures, we would have at least 1,200 people killed or like severely injured that they can't go into battle again. And we're seeing that at the same time that they've had massive losses in Shuja'iyya and Khan Yunis and in all parts of Gaza. I mean, Al-Qassam published a video yesterday of 3 or 4 of their soldiers going in Juhr al-Dik. Juhr al-Dik is supposed to be a very empty area. It's in central Gaza. So Israel positioned themselves there, and that was the area that they actually tried to cut Gaza in half with. They have like places where they throw like garbage and stuff like that, and empty areas, empty lands. So Israel thought we'd go there because they don't have, built-in populations. We wouldn't have a lot of trouble moving into the center, and they actually did. But they thought that they were safe. So Juhr al-Dik is literally towards the edge of the center of Gaza, many empty fields around it. And it showed these Hamas soldiers getting up, Al-Qassam brigades, shooting a soldier in the middle of one of their bases over there, taking his weapons and everything with all very easily, as in with no resistance whatsoever. It seems like this guy, this Israeli soldier, was left on his own for some reason. So either it's a fault of the Israeli army to leave one person on his own, or that they thought that they were that safe and that no one would be able to reach that area, but they somehow managed to go from underground, go there and kill the guy, and they took his belongings, and I'm not sure if they took the body as well. The second thing that I wanted to talk to you about is a statement from the Israeli opposition leader Yair Lapid. Yair Lapid has been the opposition leader for a while. He was a very temporary Israeli prime minister when he rotated with Naftali Bennett. So what did he say exactly? He's calling now for elections. Previously, he said when the war began, the government has our full support. It's a time of war. We're going to put all of our differences on the side, and it's time to focus on the war, putting everything else to later on. Now he's saying we need elections in the war. So the guy is clearly feeling where things are going. He's getting a bit of backwind, and he knows that the IDF are not happy with Netanyahu. He knows that the Americans are not happy, and he knows what Netanyahu is doing exactly. But the problem is here, this guy is supposed to be the opposition leader. Now, I previously stated about him the fact that he was a journalist for over 20 years, and he called the media not to be objective when it comes to the war, and that objectiveness serves the Hamas. Imagine how ridiculous that is for a journalist to say something like that. So, hello, don't hear the other side, just hear me and believe me. Thank you very much, and let me get on with it. So, but he's supposed to be the leader of the opposition who is supposedly giving us the alternative. However, there's a big problem with his call for elections. So he's calling for elections, but he's repeating the same things that Netanyahu is saying. He's saying that we don't want to give the Palestinians a state. In contrary to what he used to say before, by the way. He used to say that it's time to separate from the Palestinians. You know, they always use this derogatory language against the Palestinians. Now he's saying they've always shown that they don't want us here and we can't give them a state, and we need to continue this approach with Gaza, but we need to bring our hostages back. But Netanyahu is not able to run things properly. So what alternative are you giving exactly? You're basically a mini Netanyahu who's only looking for a position of power, and you're looking to continue what Israel is doing. You're not looking to get the people of Israel out of the mess. You're looking to continue the path of Netanyahu that led Israel to the place where it is now. And this is also resonating with all of the Israeli political elite, political leadership, about not giving the Palestinians a state. Now, Mark Regev, for example, he was with Piers Morgan earlier on, and he said that what the Palestinians need to have is less than a state. And his excuse was, imagine they go and have agreements with Iran or whatever. So he was asked, like, well, haven't you seen that equality, not giving the Palestinians equal rights for that long hasn't worked? And if you actually want a solution, then you need to have equal rights for the Palestinians. And he was giving excuses like we need to be realistic or all of this nonsense. So realistic to them is basically implementing and continuing the regime of supremacy. And this just highlights and shows really that there is no political willingness from Israel, as there hasn't been from long ago, ever since it was established, to reach any solution. Israel has established its existence on the fact that it's a God-given right for them to be on that land, and they're treating the natives, the indigenous Palestinians, as subhuman, as a lower grade race. They believe they are of a higher race, they're God's chosen people. They're looking at the Palestinians as goyim. Why should they give them a state? They have the power, they have the backing from the West, who's clapping to them and covering up all of their atrocities. So why should they give the Palestinians a statehood? Now that obviously Hamas launched the 7th of October attacks, which brought the Palestinian case to worldwide audiences, you are talking about a completely different situation. It's untenable for the situation to continue as it is. Israel is in a state of crisis. People are leaving Israel. Many people are saying that the idea of Israel as a state is dead and we have no future here. And many people are asking the government to resign. However, you're stuck with a lack of political leadership who is able to bring any solution to the Palestinians and the Israelis, which brings us back to the core point. Why is no one talking about completely getting rid of the apartheid supremacist regime and implementing a one-man, one-vote system between the Jordan River to the sea? I'm sure many Israelis wouldn't mind that. And those who mind, they're going to have to deal with the fact that they will no longer be superior or have their fantasies of a state solely for them there, because Palestinians are there, they have been there, they will remain there, and they will constantly be asking for their rights. And it's impossible to reach an all-out solution unless it includes all of the Palestinians from the Jordan River to the sea, including the Palestinian refugees all across the world. Which leads us back to the last thing that I wanted to talk about, which is a recent poll in the United States. A Harvard-Harris poll in America revealed that Americans between the age of 18 to 24, 51% of them think that Israel should cease to exist as a state and it should be handed to Hamas and the Palestinians. Now, they had a poll on the 7th of, just following the 7th of October. And back then, it was about 26%. Now, yesterday, I spoke about how Hamas's popularity has doubled amongst the Palestinians, although they were already the most popular group amongst the Palestinians. And now it seems to be like it's a global thing. In America, we're talking about America, and people are saying, and these are the ones who are actually honest. Imagine if many people thought that, maybe they're trying to trick me here. And 60% of them thought that the October the 7th attacks were justified because they were against ongoing Israeli oppression and ongoing genocide about the Palestinians. So the public opinion is shifting massively. People are unable to control the narrative through mainstream media, and people are looking through the history of everything, and they're realizing that, hold on a second, this is so clear, you've been hiding the truth from us all of this time, and no, they have a right to exist, they have a right to resist, and their resistance is legitimate. Because since the beginning of the war, people obviously used Hamas as like a scapegoat, as some sort of a tool, as a monster, to put people off supporting Palestine. And from day one, I said Hamas is being used against the Palestinian case as a whole. Why? Because they don't distinguish between Israel and the IDF. But they distinguish between like the Palestinians and Hamas. And they outlaw Hamas. So what they're saying indirectly, you can't support Palestine. Because the people who committed this are outlawed and they are labeled, right, as a terrorist organization. And you can't support them. So they were being used to scare people off from supporting the Palestinian cause, which is the target. It isn't Hamas who's the target. Plus these laws, I spoke about them previously, but I'll reiterate because it's very important. Number one, the countries that support Israel's labeling of Hamas as terrorist and do it themselves are just 34 countries. 34 countries out of 195. You're talking about 17% of the world's countries. Who are these countries? US, Canada, Australia, the EU, Israel, Japan, Paraguay, and that's about it. The EU states and the West, basically, mostly. Countries with a very rich history of colonialism, mass genocide, enslavement. Well, of course they'd be sympathetic with Israel because it represents them. It represents what they've done. So, and it's so ridiculous, the actual labeling. Like, I've looked at the law in the UK, for example. Number one, when they labeled Hamas, and I'm going to also tell you why they actually labeled them in 1 second. They, under the labeling of Hamas as a terrorist organization, a proscribed terrorist organization, they call them Hamas Izz-ad-Din al-Qassam brigades. Number one, there's a difference between Hamas and their military wing. So I'm not sure how the legalities work here, really, even if you want to talk about legally. Secondly, do you know the only reason that they stated Hamas as a terrorist organization in the UK? They stated specifically, Hamas fight to end Israeli occupation and establish an Islamic state. So that's a crime. fighting to end occupation by British law is a crime, and it's a crime to establish an Islamic State. Okay, that's obviously there's an argument with the Islamic State thing because Hamas participate in democracy, and the whole Islamic thing is a little bit different now, and it's a different subject to be spoken about. But when it comes to Israel, though, you're saying that it's okay to have an occupation, right? And have a Jewish state. That's okay, that's not terrorism. But fighting the occupation by the law is terrorism. What kind of ridiculous, absurd, bizarre, illogical thinking is this? Which brings me back to this point. Why did they label them as a terrorist organization? Does anyone ask that question? Part of labeling an organization as a terrorist organization is the level of threat it poses to your country. When did Hamas ever threaten the UK? Can someone tell me that? Never. They never threatened the UK. Has Israel threatened the UK? Well, we've seen many investigations previously how they undermine the democracy in Britain by politicians like AIPAC does in America, the Zionist lobby. We've had a massive undercover report from Al Jazeera when Jeremy Corbyn was running for PM, and how they demonized him, obviously with the help of mainstream media to fool the masses who were fooled. And they're talking about Hamas. Excuse me, the threat to your democracy and your security is the Zionist lobby buying your politicians for a political foreign entity that works for its own interests and not yours. Where is the talk about that? These countries prescribed Hamas as a terrorist organization for the sake of Israel, not for the sake of anyone. As a matter of fact, there was a research published a few years back saying that the prescription of Hamas as a terrorist organization, particularly in the UK, hinders and negatively affects Britain's ability to reach a peace process between Israel and the Palestinians, because Hamas is a massive player in Palestinian politics. So it's politically motivated. It's not security motivated. It's nothing to do with the threat to the people or anything of the sort. It's simply a political tool used for a foreign entity. Yet no one is talking about that. So these were the main things that I wanted to talk to you about today. I hope I've added some beneficial information as usual. I hope you enjoy the daily updates, and I'll see you soon in the next video. Take care.